Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale on what is a special episode of the show. We've been off for a couple weeks, Shane. Normally we don't take breaks, but we're coming back with a big one this week.
Well, you know, we missed a week, and so we're making up for it. Usually we have one guest per week, and we got a couple this time, and it is a deluxe version of Wildcat Country, to say the least.
So we're not doing buy or sell this week. We're going to do a roundtable discussion, and who better to have on than, well, first of all, the brother of Arizona football head coach Brent Brennan. So we have Brad Brennan, who's also a former star receiver, who we had on, I believe, in January. So, Brad, glad to have you back. And
I think he prefers to be introduced as Brent Brennan's brother. Just
no, he's Brad. I mean, okay, there we go. Yes, thank you, Shane.
You're welcome.
And then, of course, I got to admit, my favorite football guest that we have on Wildcat Country, because we have you on so often, Barrett Baker, special teams captain, Tucson Fire Department. I mean, you know, we're going to have you on a lot during the regular season. Barrett, how excited are you just to start off before we get going?
I mean, just a lot of new beginnings for the program. And I think Brad would be able to attest to this, that, you know, when August rolls around, there's just a real excitement inside the program, right? And each player looking and saying, what do we have this year? But I think when you live in Tucson, then you can feel something's a little bit different. And then, you know, certainly biased being lucky enough to be a teammate of Brad and then having his brother lead the program. He's the right guy for the job. And man, we're just really excited about where we're going.
Speaking of Tucson, Brad, you don't look like you're in Tucson. This is the best backdrop we've ever had on Wildcat Country.
Yeah, this is real. We're very fortunate. We grew up in California, Northern California, but we've been coming up to Donner Lake, which is kind of on your way to Tahoe, since we were little kids. And so pretty cool. We might get a cameo from Coach Brent Brennan. I don't know. He's popping back over the house in a little bit, perhaps. So
well, you're in trouble now, Brad, because now that you say that and you make people listen for the whole hour and he doesn't show up, people are going to send. Well, you're not going to get the nasty comments. We are.
If he shows up, I will drag his ass over here. So we'll be okay.
Well, glad to have you both on. And before we get into our roundtable, since we're not doing buy or sell, it's still presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com. Use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C. Get $5 off your first purchase if you're watching the YouTube stream. Shane is holding his right now.
Yeah, we got to get these guys an Ice Shaker. What are we doing? Let's make sure that Chris Gronkowski sends one each their way after the show.
And make sure that after you buy one of these beauties to fill out the post-purchase survey, mention Wildcat Country, and Shane and I will be very happy with you. All right, Brad, I'm going to start with you for number one of our roundtable. Why is Brent Brennan the right coach for this Arizona team now and in the future?
Well, I think that there's, you know, a number of reasons, but one, coming from, you know, the Tomey lineage and being with him from like some early days, I think you can see kind of where that, you know, coaching tree has gone. Extremely successful people within that tree. And I think, you know, Coach Tomey came from one of those trees as well, right? I think that the things in today's experience of football that really matter are, there's so much noise, right? And it's like, if you can eliminate a lot of the noise and find a way to really get these guys to bond on a different level, you know, that isn't about the money, which is so, you know, running rampant through college sports right now. And even though it's very important, we totally get that part of it. But how do you guys figure, you know, the way to kind of get them to mold and become a real team? And I know that from the early days with Coach Tomey, that's how it kind of started. And Brent's going to be the guy, you know, that way moving forward.
Barrett, when you hear about that, and obviously Coach Tomey is the first thing that comes to mind. You guys both played for him, but just to see that lineage now leading Arizona in the future. You know, Jed talked about Coach Tomey, but he'd never played for him, never coached under him. Now you have a guy that played for him and coached under him.
Well, I think that, you know, it's oftentimes and this is fair to say in any component of life, but you really don't know what you have until it's gone. Right? It's a cliche to say, but there was certainly a gift that Coach Tomey had to make people feel important. And if I'm important to somebody, then I'm going to give them my best. And I think that that's the thing that he did, making his coaching staff feel important and making the players feel important. And I've run into, I would say, 4 different players off campus at restaurants or this or that, and I'm not shy about it. I love to talk to the kids and see how they're doing. and they know that Coach Brennan is different. They know that their value as a 18, 19, 20-year-old person is different, and it's empowered them, I think, to really buy into things on a different level. And that's not a shot at Coach Fish per se, but they're different styles for sure. And Coach Brennan was brought up a certain way to make sure that that 18-year-old kid that is a boy turns into a man, and that obviously football is much bigger than just that 3 or 4 year period. And if you look at Brad and what he's done as a person, right, he's a great football player for Arizona. Some fantastic highlights, culminating in a Holiday Bowl game-winning touchdown catch. He's a better husband and a better dad, though, and that's the important part, and that's what his brother brings to the program too.
Well, I'll tell you what, you guys are getting me psyched for football season. We still got 4 weeks away. Shane, a few years ago, and I hate to bring this up, but we're being transparent here. So when Jedd Fisch was hired, we had just started the podcast a few months before, and we were really upset because we both wanted Brent Brennan as the head coach of Arizona, and you and I kind of threw a fit when Jedd Fisch was hired. Why did you? I mean, in a way we did, and we were all skeptical. And
there's no evidence of that fit on Twitter anymore.
Maybe on mine, you might have deleted it. All right, so why did you want Brent Brennan then, and why do you want him now as Arizona's head coach?
Well, first of all, it's a good thing I did, because these guys are joining us on the podcast, and it'd be super awkward if I didn't think he was the right guy. But fortunately, I do. Look, I think Brent Brennan is probably the perfect guy. And based on what we've heard from a number of people, including our guest this week, he's a perfect guy for the transfer portal era, in that, Arizona is about number 30 out of all FBS teams in returning production this year. That's remarkable considering there's a head coaching change. And from all accounts, that was Brent Brennan and his staff and the relationships that he's built. Brad told us right after the hire that Brennan's always been that great relationship guy. Barrett's told us the same thing. And our guy, Matt Moreno, has told us that Brent Brennan was in on a lot of these, 3-star and even some 4-star guys at San Jose State, even though they didn't always pick San Jose State. They were a finalist along with some other power schools, I think, because Brent was so, and his staff in particular, and I'm sure that's intentional as well, the people he picks were so relationship driven. And so now that he's at Arizona, a power school, not a blue blood by any means, but a power school, I think he's going to be able to land some more of those guys. Now, I think this first season, there's a lot on the line, and because he has been so successful at bringing back so many of the top players from last year, the expectations are pretty high. But I think the fact that, in the transfer portal era, this is kind of a throwback to what it looked like before the transfer portal. The number of guys who returned to this year's team. You don't see that anymore typically with the head coaching change. You certainly didn't see it at Washington or at a lot of other schools. So that in itself tells me he's the right guy for the job. And obviously he has the program in his blood. He's not an alum, but he's got the ties. Obviously Brent's wife is an alum. He's got a lot of those ties there. So you have someone who's likely to embrace the program, embrace the history of the program, and possibly, we'll probably get into this a little more later, but stay longer term if the opportunity is there to do so.
I was really impressed when we had Brent on the show after we had you on the first time, Brad. We had Brent on a few weeks later, and then I met him in person when they did a rally out in Phoenix in May. And he just came across as just a very, like, a guy you could sit at the bar and have drinks with. And you don't really, I feel like when we had Jedd on, it was really an intense conversation, and it just, like, Brent was, I'm going to confuse that I'll show here. Brent was a guy that you just feel like, hey, you can sit, have a normal conversation with, wasn't trying to put on a show for everybody. He was just being himself. And I thought that was really cool. And that's what I like to see in a football coach. In this day and age where you see a lot of guys who are ego driven, Harbaughs and the Ryan Days of the world, you have the Brent Brennan who's chill and obviously did a pretty good job keeping that team together. And we'll talk about that. Now, Brad, I'm going to come to you for number 2 here. This one's kind of putting you on the spot here. Define what a successful season for Arizona football feels like, and what would be considered a failure in your opinion.
Yeah, I think, with coming off of last season, you have this like pretty crazy expectation, right? U of A, as much as we all love it, hasn't had this consistent, like, boom, boom, boom. We're going to just keep, being good every single year. I think we're all pretty aware of that. So you do have a different expectation. I think with that, just the changes in not only the college football world with the portal and NIL, but with also a whole conference shakeup, right? These are teams we don't really see every week, that we didn't in the past really care to watch every week, right? Really focused on the pack. And so I think some of those things are really hard. So expectation wise is huge. I think, one of the things they obviously did really well was hold that nucleus together, to be able to rally around it and recruit their balls off, which has been, pretty impressive, I think everyone would say. The other side is, I think that, now with that expectation, it's like, well, you still got to show up. And I think Brent's pretty realistic about that. But what would be a success? People want to see wins, man. Like, I don't think that's, something that like anyone's going to say that they don't want to see. And so it's going to be expected that they win. I think everyone's excited for them to come out strong. I think if they can come out strong, then that's going to, help give the team momentum, give them some confidence. But I think, successful season, they want to go to bowl games every year, man. Like, I think if you can set the expectation at that, I know that their expectations probably internally in that locker room are much higher. But I mean, you're going to bowl games every year, year in and year out. I mean, Barrett and I know we only went to two, I think, during our time there, and we had one of the best runs, in the history of the school. So it's not easy. And going into a new conference, I think is going to be really hard. So if they can keep stringing together bowl wins, I think that is the key in beating, some of those big, perennial kind of teams over throughout the country that people maybe know a little bit better than some of the Pac-12 schools.
Barrett, one of my favorite stats from the offseason that I've mentioned on the show several times, but I'm going to say it before you give your thoughts on this one. So if Arizona beats New Mexico and NAU as they should, and Texas were to beat Michigan in week 2, which seems probable considering where they're going to be ranked, Arizona would then have the longest active win streak in the country at 9 games.
Amazing.
Wow.
It's crazy to think about, isn't it? I mean, just throwing that out there. So Barrett, you have never been shy about telling us your expectations. What is a successful season to you, and what is a failure?
Well, Clubber Lang beat Rocky Balboa in Rocky 3 because Rocky lost the eye of the tiger, correct? And so do we have the leaders internally to make sure that we kept our foot on that gas throughout the summer and leading into the fall? Because a coach is there to push the buttons and do the X's and O's, but Brad would know this. Like we had, and Coach Tomey, just going back to that real quick, in 1998, one of the things that Coach Tomey talked often about is that every senior had their best year in the program, right? They all peaked their senior years. So the Kelvin Efons, the Mike Luckies, the Paul Shields, that whole crop of seniors, we played at the highest level when we were supposed to. We need that from this team as well, though. So I would say that, with the new staff that's coming in and resetting and getting everybody on the same page, coming off a huge, defining win over Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl, there is a lot of momentum. But make sure that we did not read too many headlines and that we realize what got you there. So we need to have that hunger of a team that wins 1 and 2 games and can't stand to be the laughing stock and has the maturity and the discipline to stay on top. So I think that would be one thing that I'm interested to see is internally, do we have that killer edge, that killer instinct that is necessary to beat teams when you don't play your best? And but I think Brad is right on the money there, that unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we are all judged based off wins and losses. And this is a team that when you start looking at the schedule, we are supposed to win, per the prognosticators, 9 wins, right? We're supposed to win 8, 9, 10 types of, and if we're where we want to be as a program, I think that was what you have to have as an expectation, is 8, 9, 10 wins. And I'm biased. I believe in the staff. I believe in the person that is leading the program. I think he's got fantastic assistant coaches. And now we got to make sure that the players do it for 60 minutes on every Saturday.
Shane, I don't want to get ahead of myself because you've given me a lot of crap about over the years how I told you when they hired Kevin Sumlin, I'm going to buy Rose Bowl tickets or book my room in Pasadena. And
you did the same thing with the Final Four this past year too, didn't you?
But Shane, I am a Fiesta Bowl ticket holder. And if Arizona were to win the Big 12, they would play they would be the home team in the first ever college football quarterfinal game on New Year's Eve. I'm just throwing that out there.
Why do you do that?
I'm just throwing it out there.
All right.
Just throwing it. All right. So what's success to you and what's a failure?
All right. Well, the number, I mean, if you want a number, and I know you want a number, the number that keeps coming to my head is 8. I think that's realistic based on the returning talent, based on the schedule. The Big 12 is not as top heavy, but there is probably there's more parity, I would say, and more decent teams, and you just have a larger number of teams you got to go through in the Big 12. I think the two things that possibly stand in the way are, I mean, beyond what Barrett mentioned, which I think is a great point about, just leadership from year to year. I think Arizona does bring back an abundance of leadership from last season, which is good. But, number one, just I've mentioned this a bunch of times, but how do the players and the new staff gel? I sounds like everything's been going great in training camp and in the weight room and everything, but when it gets to a game situation, you just don't know that until it happens. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing is that you mentioned, Eric, is Arizona was very fortunate for the most part last year on the injury front. And, you have a big injury and then things change and you kind of take it week to week. And then you're looking at, Barrett referenced Rocky 3. My prediction at that point would be pain if there was, if we had a big injury. So, hopefully that doesn't happen, but I think going into the season, I think 8 wins ish is realistic. Are we expecting too much after a great run to the end of the last season and a coaching change? I don't know, maybe, but I think based on the level of productivity brought back, I think that if everything comes together, I think 8. I would be happy with an 8-win season, and again, that's subject to change week by week depending on what we see on the field and maybe off the field as well.
I'm really shocked. You all three gave great answers, but I mean, for a guy that wrote 2 books about it and 2 guys that played in the rivalry, none of you mentioned a win over ASU. Brad, I mean, how important is that for you personally?
I don't even think that even needs to be said. I think that is just that's always a number one. Beating your rival is always there. However, there's teams that have a rough season and they beat the rival, and it's kind of like, well, they beat the rival, but their year was pretty crappy, right? So I don't think it really comes down to just that game. I know that their focus is, hey, we're going to go out and take one at a time and hopefully win them all. But at the same time, it's like that rival game, man. We all know that means a little bit more at the end of the year.
All right, Barrett. So I'm putting you on the spot here, but you've been on with us enough times to know that I like to do that. If Arizona were to win 8 or 9 games, but lose to ASU at the end of the year, is it still a successful season?
Yeah, I mean, it's the body of the entire, it's the entirety of the season. And so when you say success, it's a successful season that hurts a lot more at the end, because then we would be turn the page and go get a bowl win, and now you end on a good note. That's always what it is. So hypothetically, I mean, I don't think Brad and you never want to lose to that program ever. I don't think that we are. I think we're in a much better position moving forward. So I would almost dodge it by saying that I think it's not going to happen.
I mean, I would be shocked at this point if that were to happen, based on everything, the talent levels that I've seen, just kind of my research. I don't think ASU has improved that much. All right, Shane, we're gonna start our third question with you. What's your biggest concern heading into this 2024 season?
I think I already said it. I think just how is everyone going to work together? You have a different coaching staff with different temperaments, and you never know how things are going to work in an in-game situation. You have a different play caller. How is that all going to work? You got a different mostly a different coaching staff. Obviously, Dwayne Akeen is still there, but you got mostly different guys. So I think there's that. And then if you're just looking at positions, I think everyone is highlighted the defensive line. That they have a lot of new faces on the defensive line. Bill Norton was I think the last holdover from last season, and he decided to transfer to Texas. So I think that Brent Brennan and his staff have done a good job bringing in fresh faces in the transfer portal. But you just don't know until you see it. It's football. I think these guys would tell you it's still pretty simple game. You win the battle up front, you're going to win. And turnover battle, you're going to win most of the time. So I think they're in good shape in the offensive line. Defensive line is a question mark. And then as crazy as it is when you have T-Mac, I think just the receiver position overall, you lose Jacob Cowing, you lose Tanner McLaughlin. Are they going to have another top option at tight end? Are they going to have a solid number 2 receiver behind T-Mac? Is Lamonius Craig going to step up, or someone else going to step up and take up that role and not have, so T-Mac's not double team constantly? I think that's a concern, but I think the overall, the position concerns are few and far between. To me, it's more that intangible of a new staff and the players who signed up to play for a different coaching staff. And I love that they stayed, and I love how loyal they are and the leadership they've shown, but you just don't know how everything's going to come together until they hit the field.
And that's a fair point. Brad, what's your biggest concern heading into this season? Oh, we got you on mute here. Oh, there we go.
I always would say, staying healthy is always a key concern. But that said, I think that's why they've done such a great job at recruiting too. Like having depth, like really, really helps that, where some teams just don't have it. And so I think that's, one of the main things that they're really trying to fill some holes, obviously, but also, have depth for things that come up. You just don't know season to season, who's going to be available, because it's a grind. That's always a concern.
Barrett, my concern is kind of a weird one, but I want to see as from a player's perspective if it's valid. When you look at Arizona's schedule, they have 2 cupcakes, let's say, right off the bat. Then you're at Kansas State on a Friday night. You have a bye week, and then you're at Utah. Arguably, your 2 toughest games are back-to-back in the schedule, and that kind of sets the tone going forward. So if Arizona were to lose those 2 games, as they will be favored, they will not be favored in either game, per the odds makers, are you concerned that might set a negative flow for the rest of the year? Or do you just kind of toss that, like Arizona lost 2 games in a row last year to Washington and USC and then didn't lose again? So any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think momentum is an interesting thing, and it can really start in a positive manner. And then I think, multiple years ago when we went at the beginning of that losing streak, started with Washington, and then, with someone, things just spiraled out of control, correct? So it can go the wrong way as well. Again, team leadership, right coaches pushing the right buttons. And I think there's just a belief that each week is a challenge in and of itself, and that's the discipline sometimes. So the first 2 weeks, it doesn't matter, because coach always used to say this: the best team doesn't always win, the team that plays the best win. So you got to get out there week by week and have that discipline to know that their 22 starters can't be as good as our 22 starters when it comes to execution. And I don't really care about Kansas State, and I don't really care about Utah, and I hope the guys in the locker room feel the same way. Give us your best 105 guys. We're going to give you our best 105 guys, and we're going to kick your butt at the end of the 60 minutes. And that's the mentality that you have to have. And if it doesn't go right in that particular week, you double down and you get ready to kick butt the next week. And I think that's what we will obviously see. We know how to win. We're on a winning streak right now. Put the foot on the gas and keep going.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that. I mean, I remember our last year there. I mean, we were 5-1, I think, and lost 6 straight. Is that right, Barrett? And there was always this.
Brad, I was already gone. Remember, I was.
Oh yeah,
out.
you're ahead. Sorry. Yeah. My last year, the year that Tommy had left also, was essentially like we were 5-1 and feeling pretty good about ourselves, right? And you have this big like psychology around it, where when we lost a game, you could hear kind of at times in the locker room everyone saying, "Oh, well, maybe we lost this game. We can't go to this bowl game, but maybe we go the next one down," And like people were so worried about that instead of like, screw it. Like, don't worry about anything. Start talking about that. That stuff doesn't matter. It'll take care of itself. And I think like their coaching staff and those guys, I think, are pretty well dialed in how do you get that psychology of that team, of that locker room, to like not think about that outside noise and just focus on kind of, the task at hand and that game day, that game week. So that's super important, I think. And we totally screwed that up my senior year, I feel like.
When you think about that, this team probably, and Shane, I'll throw this one to you. This team probably has the most hype on it preseason since the '99 team, which was I think it was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. You're going to Penn State, you're playing in Happy Valley, and then, you get trounced, and then it obviously didn't go so well after that. Shane, I know you're a historical guy with, you know the history of Arizona football pretty well. And you are cynical. We know that. Does this concern you when you think about that? The hype, It never lives up to the hype. That I'm just throwing it out there.
First of all, I'm not cynical. I'm realistic, and you need to understand that very well. Well, in terms of the hype, I think back to 2014, and I think there were a lot of expectations for the 15 team. College game day came to town, and then that night things ever went off the rails. My Scooby Wright he was already hurt, and Richard probably brought him back too soon. He got hurt again. Anu Solomon goes down essentially for the season. And Arizona was a very average team that year. And so that's the kind of thing that can happen. So, yeah, I think especially today when you have social media as well, it's easier than ever to buy into your hype and think that you've arrived. I think until proven otherwise, I think in particular, Noah Fafita and Tedero McMillan have really emerged as leaders who will not allow that to happen. I think it's one thing for the coaches to say it. It's another thing to hear it from the players. And we had Noah Fafita on our program twice before he ever played a snap at Arizona. And I think we both got the impression that he's wise beyond his years. He gave great answers. He was very articulate, very sharp guy. And I think those guys are probably going to do their best. Like if that ever creeps in, like to where Brad was talking about, oh, well, we lost this one, but let's look to see if we can make this game. And, instead of taking that one game at a time mentality, I think those guys will step up and say, guys, knock it off, and I'm guessing that, and I'm sure Brad knows this better than we would, but my guess is that Brent is really counting on the leaders on this team to do that, to say, you guys, I can't be there for everything. You guys need to lead the way and really set that example. And I think they have the guys on that team, that they lost some leaders from last year, but they're bringing a lot of those guys back. And I think that makes a difference in terms of living up to the hype and not buying into your own whatever press you would say for press clippings now, your own social media posts, your own tweets, your own TikToks, whatever.
Just something I was thinking about as we're all talking here. Arizona has 3 potential first-round picks in next year's draft, and Brent was able to keep them all in this day and age of the transfer portal and NIL, where Ohio State's throwing out $20 million on players, getting, 5 stars from Alabama. And these 3 guys who are somewhat likely, if not more than likely, to go in the top 32 next year into the NFL didn't leave. That says something.
Yeah. Can I just add to, in terms of the productivity that Arizona's bringing back, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the guys that they lost who were the most productive last year were guys who were already going to leave anyway. Jacob Cowing, Tanner McLaughlin, Michael Wiley, some guys on defense, so there were guys that, that Brent Brennan didn't have an option to keep. So you consider that as well. It's even more impressive. And I can't say enough good things about what he's done in the offseason. I really can't.
All right, Barrett, I know you go to all the games like I do down there. Which one are you most excited for outside of ASU this season? Which game is a must for you? Drop everything, have to be there, or have to watch it?
I mean, it's such a cop-out answer, but I mean, I love witnessing them. I love being there. I love going with my family. And I don't really have one. I think they're all, and again, that's a cop-out, but I love supporting the squad. I love going to Arizona Stadium. I love cheering, and we get there before the game and we leave after the game. I never leave early, and that's how we've raised our 3 kids, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So, I love going to the first 2 games of the season because I want to see who the backups are. I want to see who is the kid that is waiting for that opportunity to get his chance to make an impression on the program and be somebody that people talk about. So that's why I love it when we get some of those early games to develop some depth. And then, when it gets late in the season and things really start meaning something, and we can get that stadium packed and really have a true home field advantage. So I think that's why, for me, it almost moves throughout the course of the year as to why I look forward to different things.
All right, Shane, which game are you most excited for this year?
Well, in terms of home games, obviously beyond the ASU game, and we've talked about that, you're no other rivals on the. I mean, there weren't really Pac-12 rivals, you could say, outside of ASU. But then, now that you don't have the Pac-12, I would say just in terms of the opponent, I think West Virginia coming to Tucson could be a big game. I'm higher on West Virginia than most people are. I think that could be I'm not saying it's going to be for a spot in the Big 12 championship game, but I think it could be, the loser of that game, that point in the season could ultimately be out of it could be like an elimination game, essentially, if both teams end up playing as well as we thought. You know, the biggest games on the calendar are the weeks 3 and 4 at Kansas State and at Utah, which are both going to, I think those certainly as of now are the 2 toughest games on the schedule. The Utah game, you think about, it's always tough to win at Rice Eccles. And then you have the little intangible of Jed running up the score last year and the guys remembering that. And Jed doesn't have to suffer the consequences of that. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But I think in terms of the home game, the West Virginia, I'm actually excited about. You know, I don't go to every game like Eric and Barrett do. I'm not as good and loyal an Arizona fan. But if I go to a couple games, the ASU game, I definitely going to go to. But if I had to pick another one at this point, it'd probably be the West Virginia game because I think that could be a big one.
Yeah, Shane, I know I'm sick in the head driving 2 hours each way to watch bad teams over the years. I mean, I wonder why I'm a single guy at 41. I can answer my own question. All right, Brad, what's the game that you're kind of circling as one that you're looking forward to seeing this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like seeing Arizona win at home, but I think for me, it's always been more fun going to someone's house and, you know, beating them down and celebrating on their field in the locker room. That locker room, man, at an opposing team's facility. I mean, those are like moments that you never forget, especially when you're an underdog, which we were quite often at that time. So, you know, that Utah game, I mean, that's going to be a monster. Those guys, they've been good, man, for a long time in this conference, in the Pac. And that's always a tough one. I'm really interested in the Kansas State game, though. You know, that's something that they, you know, team that they don't get to play much. You know, on the road, I'm sure there'll be a lot of hype. So I'm actually going to try and get out to that one. So BB, maybe you can meet me out there, buddy.
The one that I'm looking forward to, Colorado homecoming.
How could you forget about the Super Bowl? Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. You got arrogant Dion bringing his overrated team that's going to get more exposure than they ever should, with his overrated son as quarterback and egotistical son as quarterback. I mean, he's a good player, but
Eric, how do you really feel about Shedeur?
It's ridiculous. I mean, the fact that the media and I'm guilty of this. We write special articles on Sportsline about Colorado. It's what we do.
People read it because people read them, right?
People read Dion.
Yeah.
I want to see Brent smack him down. I want to see Dion not want to shake his hand at the end of the game because Brent ran it up. That's what I want to see.
You know, Brent's 2 daughters go to Colorado as well. So, so that adds a little more fuel, even though they will be wearing red and blue for that game.
Okay.
I'm sure.
You can't root for Dion. I mean, you can't root for Dion. Okay, go ahead.
Guys, said, somebody just walked in. If you guys want him to jump on real fast,
yeah, let's have him jump on. All right.
Can you guys hear us?
Yep. All right, here we go. This is exciting. I mean, this is impromptu, a Brennan family trip. There he is, Coach. Hey, how are you? Glad to have you on. And just your thoughts on, you know, as the season comes along, how excited are you right now?
I can't wait to get started. You know, we're less than a week out now and just fired up. This is kind of the recharge time for coaches. You know, we need to take a break because it's kind of it kind of never stops. And so this is the one time where we get to take a little bit of a break and be with our families and do a little vacation. And then, you know, we hit the ground running Monday.
Hey, Brent, we just confirmed with Brad that your daughters will be wearing Arizona gear at the Colorado game. Is that accurate?
That's a slam dunk. There's no confusion there. Like they're all in.
Coach,
Barrett,
when I saw go ahead, Shane.
No, I was going to say, Barrett, just want to give you a chance to chat with Coach if you wanted to ask him something.
No, I mean, I've run across Coach a couple times now, and I mean, I left in '98. He came in 2000, so I mean, I never got to work with him when he was a GA, but you know, he has galvanized the Wildcat family, and man, we're everyone is so excited to see you come in and put your personal stamp on it. And I told the guys earlier, I've run into a couple of players at Chipotle and various places across the city, and they all are just saying that you've made them feel like they're really part of something special and that they personally feel very, very important. So you're doing a great job with that. I can't wait to be there every week supporting you, and I'll be out at practice, you know, just living every moment and sucking it up. And we're ready to bear down every week.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Come out every day if you want. I mean, I think that's such a big part of it. Just having people like you that played there and were great players there, but also, like, I want everybody involved. I want people to feel great about being around our program. I want them to feel great about being around our building. It doesn't matter what your level of involvement is. I just want people to show up. And I also know, like, going in this new conference, we're going into we're starting to play. We're going to be playing football in an area of the country that really cares about football. And it's going to be a much different feel for our football team and for our fans. And so I'm just excited. I love the kids I'm getting to coach right now, and the feel, the vibe, the love I felt from the community, from the former players. Obviously, you're a big part of that. Brad's a big part of that. Like all those guys that I was around a long time ago, Dick Tomey, that connection. It's pretty special.
Coach, tell us about your staff and just how you guys have all are working together. I mean, to bring in a guy like Dino Babers with that experience as a head coach at Syracuse, Danny Gonzalez, who was formerly a head coach at New Mexico, and an experienced staff. And how do you think the players like working with guys who are, obviously not just you, who's has head coaching experience?
Well, I mean, I think like coaching in general is just all about connection. And so I was looking for people that care about young men as people first, and then the development of the football thing happens over time, right? And everybody wants it right now. I get that. We're living in that space, but the guys that we put together on the staff are going to be all about the process of getting better, the developmental process to be a good college football player. I think that gets a little lost right now with the transfer portal and all that stuff. But I love the staff we put together. I think our players are feeling their energy, their expertise, and I'm excited to get going. I can't wait.
Brad, one more question. I'm sure you're busy. I appreciate you stopping by, but my son just started kindergarten this week, and today was college gear day, and I made sure he wore Arizona colors in Sun Devil country. But I know you had a chance to visit with Eric at one of your stops throughout the state, the Arizona Wildcats tour throughout the state. What was the vibe from fans around the state of Arizona in terms of how they're feeling about the program?
It was incredibly positive. I think, the success that we had last year, and truthfully, you guys know, I wasn't part of that. So I give the previous staff a ton of credit. They recruited great players who were also like incredible human beings. And, right now our job is to try and build a consistent winner at the U of A. But everywhere we've gone, the people have been fantastic. Our new athletic director has been amazing. Just pushing us out there and getting us face to face with people, I think, is really, really important. And that's been a real positive thing so far. So I hope it continues. I mean, obviously we're in the honeymoon phase, right? We haven't played bad football, or I haven't made a bad call yet and all that stuff. But everyone's so optimistic right now, and we just want to ride that wave and pour gas on that fire and see if we can't continue to build on what they did a year ago.
Well, Coach, thanks for sitting down with us and kind of hanging out for a few minutes. I mean, we're happy to keep you, because I want to tell a story to these guys who played on the 98 team. I've never admitted this on Wildcat Country before, and I'm probably going to get crap for that. I just want to throw that out there. So we'll do that here coming up after the break. But Coach, glad to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. Yeah. I know you're not going to get a lot of downtime here soon, so we'll let you enjoy it. But we appreciate you stopping by.
All good. Bear down.
What's up, Wildcat Country? Chris Gronkowski here, and I'm at the Ice Shaker Warehouse, the proud sponsor of the Wildcat Country podcast. And I got something new and exciting to show you. We're talking about the 4D printed University of Arizona shaker bottles with the Legacy Championships on it. Check it out now at iceshaker.com.
Well, how about that? That is a special surprise on Wildcat Country, which is presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Hey, Wildcat fans, you want to win a brand new car? Well, it's the last weekend of the month, so it's a good time to do so. It's time to play for your chance to drive one away. Harrah's Auction Casino is celebrating its 30th anniversary with the Win Your Wheels giveaway. This is your chance every month to win a new car. Just play your favorite slots at Harrah's Auction using your Caesar Rewards card on the last Saturday of each month, which happens to be this one, the 27th, to win your wheels. The more you play, the more entries you'll receive. Harrah's Auction Casino, play for all. All right, I was telling you guys in the break, I committed treason in my first ever Arizona game. I've never admitted this. The first time I was ever in Arizona Stadium, I believe it was October of 1998. and Arizona happened to be playing a ranked team of Oregon with Akili Smith, who ended up going number 3 in the draft. So I don't know if anybody, Shane, I don't know if you knew this. I actually despised Arizona football for a long time because my parents are Miami alums.
I did know
and
that.
In 1994, the Fiesta Bowl, 29-0. I was bitter, and I got so much crap from all my friends in elementary and middle school. Oh, look, you're Miami. They stink. Arizona is so much better. So I was bitter. So I wore a green Brett Favre jersey as a Packer fan to that game that Arizona won 38-3. And never again have I cheered against
38-3.
You know, the worst part about that, Eric, and I did not know that part. The worst part isn't that you wore the other team's colors, is that you're one of those fans who wore a non-relevant jersey to a football game.
Those are tough.
And it wasn't even the right level.
It was green. It was green. I was trying. I was rooting against Brad, and I was rooting against Barrett. And that was 26 years ago.
I would have kicked you out for wearing green, and then I would have brought you back in and kicked you out for wearing a pro jersey at a college game.
One of my best friends and his dad were with me at that game, and they will never let me live it down. All right. What do you guys remember about that game? Brad, I'll start with you. Arizona, Oregon, 1998.
Yeah, there was a lot of hype to that game. If I remember correctly, I think game day came to Tucson. And I might be wrong. But I'm almost positive. And we put the smack on them, and it felt good because we've lost a lot of tough games to Oregon. And now I'm married to a Duck, which, trust me, I've pulled out some of those newspaper clippings and sent them over to them just to remind them that we used to kick their ass a little bit more back in the days. But that game, I had some really fun plays from Keith, and big touchdown game that really rings a bell in my mind. But man, it's always the locker room after. You just can't put a price tag on those locker rooms after those big wins. And just everyone singing Bear Down and singing and jumping around and going nuts. Like that's the main things that I remember from those big wins.
All right, Shane, by the way, it was Halloween, so I can get away with that. You can wear a just said, Barrett, what do you remember about that game that I embarrassed myself at, apparently?
I think that the total domination that took place was probably a little surprising to us, because you always believe, or you better believe when you take the field, that you're going to win. And we, at that point in time, we had already developed a very strong belief, that no matter who was against us, that we were going to beat them. We had the 3 minutes of bad football versus UCLA, but we were going to mow down whoever came across us. And again, a home field and so much hype with Akili Smith and some of the weapons that they had. And the previous year was the opening game of the season at Autzen Stadium, and we ended up losing. And they ran the opening kickoff back against us for a touchdown. It was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. So to be able to get that revenge, and really just from all 60 minutes, we just physically beat them in every capacity, and that kind of that made people realize that Arizona football that particular year was a different beast, and we were a special team.
All right, before we wrap it up here, Shane and I have been doing this summer, we've been talking about a favorite memory from a year. Now, we just talked about one game in 1998, but Brad, your favorite memory from that season? You pick a game, I know you talked about the locker rooms. Is there a specific game? Was it after the Holiday Bowl, or what would you say stands out most when you think about 1998?
I think more than the Holiday Bowl. I mean, the Holiday Bowl was wild, but that's like surreal type stuff, I think, at the time. But when we beat ASU, like, that game was crazy. Like, because we were feeling pretty good about ourselves, but like, you have a rivalry game, right? And like, anything goes in that game, and you've seen both sides upset that thing, when the other team was supposed to win. So I think that was like a super important thing. And it was the first year of the BCS, so it was very strange. Like, we thought we might be going to the Rose Bowl. And so there was like this crazy like hype around that, potential as well. And then obviously we saw UCLA go out and lay an egg that next week against Miami. But it was, I think that was like a really special time. Like, fans rushing the field. I was able to find my way on the goalpost somehow. And just had like such a cool memory up there. And just with, the celebrating with your teammates after just a rivalry win. I mean, that was, and knowing that we had something next that was going to be, an incredible bowl game. I think that was super, super special that year.
All right, Barrett, your favorite memory from that season?
I'd say the same thing. I mean, to Brad and I were both walk-ons, and he was far more successful as a football player. But when you like individually to be able to be a part of a team that is still talked about in Arizona history, and week by week thinking, my God, we've got something different here, and then getting into that last game, and listen, they had some really really good players. J.R. Redmond, Kenny Mitchell, the tight end. I mean, they had NFL talent on that team, and 50-42, Kelvin Hunter swatting down that ball in the end zone with the game on the line. It was a battle. It was a tough battle. They didn't roll over, and they really gave us their best. And I mean, I can still envision Brad up on that goalpost. But just to hit on what Brad has said a couple of times, our team, as in like the current version of the Arizona Wildcats 2 years ago, didn't know how to sing Bear Down. They did not know the words to Bear Down Arizona. And I know that's not the official song, but when they would release a video from the locker room, you would get to a point in that song where they didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to sing it because we had not been able to sing that song, right, during that losing streak, and kids didn't even know what about that tradition. So to go from that to be able to, sing it on a week to week basis and really take that 60 minutes of hard fought and really the days leading up to each game and hug each other and scream and laugh and, cry, all of the emotions that you get into it. It is one of the most special things that anyone would ever come across. And in some ways, I love the fact that they put it on video, you know what I mean? So people can kind of live vicariously through that. And then sometimes I'm like, man, you take that locker room and what happens behind closed doors, and it is a really, really special thing. And it's an intimate thing. So I love the fact that Brad really hit on that so many times, that 12 times in one season that we got to do that. And that was a fantastic capper.
12 times, man. That's crazy.
Shane, your favorite memory I knew you hadn't gone to Arizona yet, but what do you remember 98 Arizona football? You've also studied the rivalry, that ASU game. Just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was a few months away from going to U of A, but it would have to be that game. I didn't follow as close attention until a little bit later. But yeah, I think, obviously Trunk candidate went off in that game, and Arizona needed all three of those touchdowns. Was it Ryan Keeley, who had I think a record game at the time for ASU, and it still wasn't enough, and Arizona still needed to avoid a Hail Mary. But yeah, it's that. And the other thing is, the last time that Arizona and ASU met in Tucson before that game was when the ASU's Rose Bowl year, when they blew out Arizona. And I'm sure I'm sure there are plenty of guys on the 98 team who remembered that and wanted to get some payback. So, but that goes to show, there's a lot of examples over the years of an Arizona team with a worse record than ASU going in and beating the Sun Devils. There are fewer examples of it happening the other way around. And that it wasn't terribly close to happening, but it was still within range. And Trunk Canada definitely cemented his legacy as, when people think of Trunk Canada, when Arizona Wildcats fans think of Trunk Canada, they think of that game, and they think of just the three big runs that he had. So it was remarkable, and it's unfortunate that it was the BCS era, but it wasn't the college football playoff or era now, or even when the previous system with four teams, because obviously Arizona today would be going to an even bigger bowl than the Holiday Bowl, which was still fantastic at the time. But yeah, I think from that 98, the other thing that stood out to me, which I didn't like as much, was the basketball team, which I think was a great team that year, getting blown out in the Elite Eight against Utah. But then a few months later, Arizona having the remarkable football season it had. And it was one of those years, kind of like last year, where we didn't keep asking, is it basketball season yet? Because the football team kept just dominating. And it shows that it is possible. It can happen at Arizona. You just need consistency. You need the right guys. You need the right coaches. And, Dick told me over the 14 years he was there, Arizona wasn't a perennial championship contender, but they were a winning team more often than not. And they had two amazing seasons in there, the Desert Swarm year and then the 98 season. And that's something that I'm hoping that, in the new Brent Brennan era, that we'll be able to revisit again and improve upon. But even if I would take the Dick Tomey scenario in a heartbeat, where the minimum expectation every year was a bowl game, and the '98 team definitely was one of the most successful on paper and one of the most memorable in the history of the program.
All right, this is probably the easiest question that I've ever closed a show with. Barrett, I'll start with you. One word to describe the future of Arizona football.
Untapped.
Brad?
I'd say legacy. I think like there's a whole new legacy that's coming, and I'm excited about that. And one last thing, I need to introduce you to Pat Brennan, who also is an Arizona Wildcat.
Oh yeah,
brother Pat, come say hello real fast. 2 seconds.
I love it. What's up, Pat? How you doing?
There he is.
Hey, eating some tacos over here. Respect. Y'all are very well lit up. Very nice.
Brad was better lit up about when we started the podcast.
Hey, Pat, we'll ask you this one. One word to describe the future of Arizona football.
Oh,
Tough on the spot.
wow. Okay, so a couple of beers deep. I would just say this. Tradition.
Okay. All right, I like it. That's good.
Love
there
it.
you go. All right, Shane, what's your one word?
Stability. I think that hopefully that's what we'll have. I mean, I think, the best case scenario from a realistic standpoint is, you have a guy like Jedd Fisch who comes in and turns around the program at a faster rate than we ever thought possible. And then he essentially hands the keys over to a guy who was definitely capable of keeping that going, building the relationships, has ties to the university, and is, I think, will be more likely to stay longer term if he has some success. Obviously, he has to be compensated fairly. But I think that he can be the guy. He can kind of be, it's kind of like the Larry Smith to Dick Tomey transition. Maybe this is the Jedd Fisch to Brent Brennan transition. If it ends up being anywhere close to similar, I'll be thrilled with that. So hopefully stability, and we'll get to a place again where the minimum expectation every year is a bowl game for Arizona football.
And my word is bright. I mean, I've driven down to all these games over the years, and I outside of 2020, I've missed 2 home games since 2005, and I've watched so much bad football. But you know what? The times are changing, and now we're getting there. And it felt so good a couple of years ago to win 5 games, and then last year to win 10 games. And now the future, where we talk about bowl games, as you guys have mentioned, it now seems realistic. We're not saying, wow, what would it be like to make a bowl game? Now we've been there, and we won a bowl game.
3 years ago was what would it be like to win a football game, and now here we are with the second longest winning streak in the country. It's amazing how quickly fortunes can change.
Shane, I'll tell you what, this has been one of my favorite shows that we have done in a long, long time, and I think we could all agree. Barrett Baker, Brad Brennan, thank you so much. Your brothers, Pat and Brent, thanks for having them stop by. For
4
Shane
guests,
Dale,
Eric.
Four double Bs.
That's right.
4 double Bs.
Well,
you just hit it.
Pretty much.
It's
Brad. What's Pat's name?
His middle name's Barrett, so we'll give him a
perfect.
There you go. You see that, guys? We had 2 Barretts on here.
Love it.
That's right.
I don't even know what else to say. It's been a great show. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks as always for listening, and as always, bear down.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi folks, here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.